Today, we are going to break down every Lannister from Game of Thrones as a living philosophical system. We will be drawing on Hobbes, Machiavelli, Kant, Sartre, Socrates, and Camus, because each of these philosophers described exactly what is happening to this family on screen. Make sure to watch this video to the very end, because that is when the whole puzzle will finally come together. And of course, if you enjoy it, please drop a hype on this video or leave an angry comment if you didn't. That helps a lot too. Let's begin with the architect of this greatness, a man whose mere presence could silence entire halls, Tywin Lannister. His philosophy is a crystal clear, distilled Machiavellianism mixed with a brutally cold utilitarianism. In his famous work, The Prince, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, for love is preserved by the link of obligation, which owing to the baseness of men is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear preserves you by a dread of punishment, which never fails." Tywin learned this lesson in his youth. He watched his father, Tyrion Lannister, who wanted to be kind and loved, only to become a laughingstock for his own vassals. Tywin grasped the fundamental rule of power: perception shapes reality. Recall the scene from season 1 where Tywin skins a stag while lecturing Jaime. He isn't just gutting an animal, he is delivering a masterclass on the nature of power. He tells his son that
a lion doesn't concern himself with the opinions of a sheep.
In this moment, Tywin embodies Thomas Hobbes' idea that in the state of nature, humans are driven only by force and self-interest. Tywin created a simulacrum of an absolute inevitable threat. He wiped houses Rain and Tarbeck off the face of the earth, killing every last soul, and then commissioned the song The Rains of Castamere. As the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard wrote, a simulacrum is a copy that has no original in reality. Tywin no longer needed to fight everyone. He only had to send musicians to play that song for any rebellious lord to lay down their arms in terror. His image of cruelty became his greatest asset. But Tywin's philosophy isn't limited to fear. He is a rigorous, ruthless utilitarian. Utilitarianism, founded by Jeremy Bentham, posits that the moral value of an action is determined by its utility. Bentham wrote, "The greatest happiness of the greatest number is the measure of right and wrong." Tywin twisted this formula for himself. The greatest good for House Lannister justifies any sacrifice. The Red Wedding is the ultimate apotheosis of Tywin's utilitarian logic. He breaks the ancient sacred law of hospitality and commits a treacherous act by murdering Robb Stark and his men at a wedding. Yet when Tyrion reproaches him for the dishonor, Tywin asks a question that shatters the idealistic morality of Westeros.
Why it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner.
From the perspective of the cold mathematics of survival, Tywin is absolutely right. He ended a bloody war, saved resources, preserved the lives of his own soldiers, and destroyed his enemy with just a few drops of ink in letters to Roose Bolton and Walder Frey. Friedrich Nietzsche argued that morality is merely a fiction used by the herd of inferior people to restrain the exceptional few. Tywin stands beyond good and evil. He creates his own morality. And here lies the fatal flaw of his philosophy. Tywin is obsessed with legacy. But for him, family isn't made of living people. It's not his children with their feelings, traumas, and desires. For him, family is an institution, a historical construct. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." Tywin was locked inside his idea of a great house. He demanded his children be perfect cogs in his machine. He achieved the total alienation of his own family, turning them into tools. It was this blindness, this total lack of empathy and inability to see his true intellectual reflection in Tyrion, that led the greatest strategist in Westeros to end his life in the most humiliating way, on a toilet with a crossbow bolt fired by his own son. If Tywin built an empire on cold calculation, his daughter Cersei Lannister builds her world on paranoid solipsism. Solipsism is the philosophical position that only one's own mind is sure to exist. Everything else is just a figment of the imagination or objects devoid of independent value. For Cersei, only she and her children are real. Everyone else is either scenery or a threat.
Everyone who isn't us is an enemy.
Her philosophy is a pure illustration of Thomas Hobbes' ideas on the natural state of man. Hobbes wrote, "Man is a wolf to man. In the state of nature, there is neither justice nor injustice, only the war of all against all." Remember the scene where Cersei speaks with Ned Stark in the Red Keep's garden. Ned appeals to her mercy, to the law, and to honor. Cersei responds with the phrase that defines her life.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
She doesn't believe in compromise or the social contract. Jean-Paul Sartre famously said, "Hell is other people." For Cersei, every other person is a potential hell. She narrows her circle of empathy to microscopic proportions. She explicitly formulates her credo while teaching Sansa.
The more people you love, the weaker you are. Love no one but your children.
She sincerely believes that rejecting compassion for others makes her invulnerable. But the Stoic philosopher Seneca warned, "He who fears he will suffer already suffers because of his fear. Cersei lives in permanent, exhausting terror. Her aggression is not a will to power like her father's, it is the reaction of a cornered beast. Consider her dialogue with Petyr Baelish. Littlefinger, the intellectual schemer, tells her that knowledge is power. Cersei orders her guards to seize him and put a knife to his throat, then rescinds the order. She looks at the terrified Baelish and says,
Power is power.
for her, power is raw, physical violence, the ability to destroy another person here and now. Ultimately, her worldview descends into absolute nihilism. When the system turns against her, when the High Sparrow and religious fanatics trap her, she doesn't try to outthink them. In the season 6 finale, she simply blows up the Great Sept of Baelor with wildfire. She destroys the very board the game is played on. Nietzsche wrote, "If you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." Cersei became that abyss. She discarded all social masks, but by destroying all her enemies, she was left as the Queen of Ashes, eventually losing the only ones she did it all for, her children. Her philosophy of absolute egoism burned her own world to the ground. Now we turn to Jaime Lannister. His story is pure, unadulterated existentialism. Existentialism, championed by Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, asserts that existence precedes essence. Sartre wrote, "Man is condemned to be free. He is not born with a ready-made purpose. He creates himself through his choices." But what do you do if society has already forced an essence upon you, and your most righteous choice has ruined your reputation forever? Jaime was the ideal knight, the Golden Lion, the embodiment of honor and valor. But then he kills the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, to save 500,000 citizens of King's Landing from being burned alive by wildfire. He commits the ultimate act of humanism, yet society brands him the King's Slayer, a man without honor. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, explored the concept of the absurd, the conflict between a human need for meaning and the silent, irrational world. Jaime faces this absurdity head-on. He sees the total hypocrisy of the system he swore to serve. In one of the series' best scenes, the bathhouse with Brienne of Tarth, Jaime sheds his armor of cynicism. Exhausted and having lost his hand, he delivers a monologue that is a hymn to existential angst. He speaks of the vows.
Tell me if your precious Randy commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it? Would you have kept your oath then?
Jaime realizes that moral absolutes don't work in the real world. Society demands the impossible and then punishes him for making the only right choice. His arrogance in the early seasons is a defense mechanism. If the world thinks I'm a monster, I'll act like a monster. But losing his right hand becomes a moment of philosophical rebirth. That hand was his identity, his essence as the best swordsman in Westeros. Without it, he is no one. Here, Jaime turns towards Stoicism. Epictetus taught men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Robbed of physical strength, Jaime is forced to find internal ground. He begins the agonizing process of creating a new essence. Remember the scene where he sits before the White Book of the Kingsguard? The page with his name is nearly blank, recording only his betrayal. He realizes he is now the author of his own life. He fills those blank pages not with tournament victories, but with attempts to keep his word, protect the innocent, and do what is right. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." Jaime finds his why in trying to become the true knight he always wanted to be. He proves that a person is not a hostage to their past or the labels society hangs on them. Now, let's talk about Joffrey Baratheon. Technically, he's a Baratheon, but he was raised a Lannister, thinks like a Lannister, and is the direct product of Lannister philosophy. That's why he's here. Hannah Arendt introduced the concept of the banality of evil after the Eichmann trial. Her conclusion was shocking. The worst atrocities in history weren't committed by monsters, but by ordinary people who simply never thought. Joffrey is a different case. He thinks. But thinking without limits, without empathy, and without a single no, his entire life isn't intelligence. It's a weapon without a safety. Aristotle wrote in the Nicomachean Ethics, "We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts." Virtue is a habit. It isn't innate. It's built through repetition, discipline, and consequences. Joffrey received none of that. Cersei shielded him from every consequence. Tywin ignored him.
I am the king!
Robert despised him but never parented him. The result, a person who received absolute power before he ever understood that other people are people. Think about the moment he orders Ned Stark's execution. Against every political agreement, against the advice of Littlefinger and Varys, against basic logic. This isn't calculated cruelty like Tywin's. It's impulse, pure, unfiltered impulse from someone who is never taught the difference between I want and I can. Nietzsche wrote about the will to power as a fundamental drive toward growth and self-realization, the force of the artist, the philosopher, the builder. Joffrey took the form and gutted the content. He turned the will to power into the will to humiliate, because humiliation was the only form of power he ever learned to recognize. His death at his own wedding is philosophically symmetrical to his life. He dies at the moment of absolute triumph, surrounded by subjects at the center of a celebration held in his honor. Martin gives him no redemption, no moment of clarity, because the system that created Joffrey never built one.
Until the end of time.
Finally, we come to Tyrion Lannister, a man born with the mark of a monster, hated by his own father, and despised by the world. Yet, it is he who forged the most adaptive, powerful, and humane philosophy of them all. Tyrion's philosophy is a brilliant synthesis of cynicism, stoicism, and pragmatic humanism. The ancient Greek philosopher Diogenes of Sinope, founder of the Cynic school, lived in a barrel, walked with a lamp during the day, looking for an honest man, and used his sharp wit to mock the hypocrisy, wealth, and social conventions of the elite. Tyrion is the Diogenes of Westeros. Instead of a barrel, he has brothels. Instead of a lamp, he has a cup of wine.
I drink, and I know things.
He sees right through society. Remember when he slaps Joffrey in season 1? He is the only one who isn't afraid to show the spoiled prince his own insignificance, because Tyrion doesn't believe in the sanctity of royal blood. He understands that all these lords, ladies, and kings are just as flawed and weak as anyone else. They just hide their vices behind silk and steel. From the very beginning, Tyrion formulates his main rule for survival. In the first episode, he tells Jon Snow,
"Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you."
This is pure stoicism, reminiscent of Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "That which does not make a man himself worse does not make his life worse." Tyrion disarms his enemies by accepting their insults and turning them into his shield. He knows his only salvation is his intellect.
Mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone.
But unlike Tywin, Tyrion's intellect is not devoid of empathy. Immanuel Kant, in his categorical imperative, argued, "Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never merely as a means to an end, but always at the same time as an end." Tywin used people as means. Tyrion, however, feels compassion for bastards, cripples, and broken things, because he knows what it's like to be broken. When he becomes Hand of the King, he uses Machiavellian methods, cunning, deception, playing enemies against each other. Recall how he identifies Cersei's spy by telling 3 different people 3 different versions of who he'll marry Myrcella to. It's a genius political move, but he doesn't do it for the abstract glory of House Lannister. He does it to bring order and save the city from destruction by Stannis Baratheon. He applies dirty methods to achieve humanistic goals. His trial for Joffrey's murder in season 4 is a philosophical masterpiece. It is the moment the cynic stands in the square and hurls an accusation at all of society.
I'm guilty of being a dwarf.
He screams at the crowd, looking his father in the eye.
I've been on trial for that my entire life.
Socrates said, "I know that I know nothing, but others do not even know that." Tyrion knows that justice in Westeros is a farce. He strips away the illusion of the law, showing that justice in this world is merely a tool for those in power. He refuses to play by their rules and demands a trial by combat, leaving his fate to blind chance, because he understands that in a system built on lies, randomness is more honest than a jury. Tyrion survives because his philosophy is flexible. He understands that power is an illusion, a shadow on the wall. And if it is an illusion, it can be directed. He doesn't seek the throne for himself. He chooses to serve those who he believes can make the world slightly less cruel. He combines the cold, calculating mind of a Lannister with the humanity they so desperately lacked. He proves that one can see all the filth of this world and play by its most ruthless rules without losing their soul.